So thank you for taking this time. And thank you for allowing us to work with your wonderful play. We've already told the people who are here watching about at least some of your amazing achievements and etc. But what inspires you to be a playwright?
Oh, thank you for the question, and hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. I'm really delighted that you're putting up Mlimas' tale. So the question is, what inspired me to be a playwright? That's always such a complicated question because I never quite know how to answer it in a really simple way. But I think that for me, theater really began when I was young, when I was sitting around the table, my kitchen table. My mother was a school teacher, and after work, she'd come home, she'd kick off her shoes. There'd always be a ton of other women like her sitting around the table, and they'd have this big jug of wine, and they drink wine and they tell stories. And so I think that my very first theater space was our kitchen, where, as I was doing my homework, my ears were wide opening, listen to all of these women tell stories about their lives, tell stories about their work. And on some level, I think that that's what I wanted to do, is to be a storyteller, is to replicate the kind of intimacy and warmth and collective spirit that I felt when I was young in that kitchen.
And I've also read somewhere that you've said that you also have a particular focus on stories that you feel haven't been told.
Yeah, I think that one of my interests is telling stories of people who are marginalized by circumstance, people who don't often get their stories placed center stage. And I think that really stems from being a Black woman growing up in America. When I looked at television, when I went to theater, it was very rare that I saw stories in which a person who looked like me got to stand center stage and move through that story as the central character. And so I think my interest has always been to tell the stories of people who are marginalized, people who don't necessarily get to have their spaces illuminated.
And I'm thinking, obviously, since your plays have been played a lot all over the United States, but also in many other countries, so the what do you say, the want for people to hear those stories seems to be great.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the reasons that my plays get done as often as they do is that I'm really interested in several things. I'm interested in centering the voices of women from the African diaspora, but I'm also interested in exploring multiculturalism in an organic way on the stage, is looking at some of these cultural collisions that we have in our lives that we don't often put up on the stage, and we often don't put up on the screen.
So, so then you chose to write a play about an elephant.
Yes.
And of course, their stories is not often told on stage, but what else made you write this particular play?
Malima's Tale really came out of a conversation that I was having with film director Catherine Bigelow, who at the time really wanted to figure out how do we raise awareness about elephant poaching, which when we first started working on this was probably 2016, and elephant poaching was reaching catastrophic levels, and we were looking at a potential extinction event. And so it felt like really dire that we do something to raise awareness. And to most people, you think about the devastation of wildlife and it feels remote and it feels invisible. And we want to somehow figure out, how do you capture a story that shows the breadth of poaching, shows how many people are complicit in poaching, and shows like the intricate web of people who are responsible from killing the elephants to the people who are actually brokering the tusks to the people who buy those tusks. So that's really how we came to this particular story.
And what surprised you the most when in how the play have been received?
I was just hoping that people would accept the story in which the central character was an elephant, and an elephant who becomes a ghost, who travels through that they would make that little leap of faith and embrace Mlima as a character. And I was just surprised by how well the play did, because it was unlike a lot of things that were being staged at the moment.
Mm. And what's your hope like for the audience, and some of them you're talking to right now, when the audience leave after seeing Mlima, what do you hope they experience during the play, and what do you hope they bring with them?
Well, I very specifically chose to give Mlima language, so that people could be in dialogue with this particular character in a much more complicated way, that they could see him in 3 dimensions and understand that he has a story and he has a life. And when he was killed, that life was extinguished, and that a creature like Mlima, a magnificent elephant who's a great tusker in Kenya, is very rare right now. When I began writing the play, there were only 25 great tuskers left in the African wilderness. And what I found was really fascinating about the elephant that I based Mlima on is that he was hyper aware of the fact that he had these magnificent long trunks that were very precious, and an animal that probably when he was younger was very much the king of his domain had gone into hiding and had spent the most of his life trying to hide from humans and hide from other elephants, because he knew, by virtue of having these magnificent tusks, that he was a danger not just to himself, but a danger to his entire community. And that's something that I found really fascinating, is doing research about individual elephants and just how smart and self-possessed and community-minded elephants are, and that they're creatures that feel intensely, and they're creatures that mourn each other when they die. And I don't think that we think in those terms. I think that we think about animals in a really abstract way without fully understanding the complexity of who they are.
And if you get to wish, what do you wish the audience will do when they leave the theater?
I hope that people will the play is not just about an elephant. It's also about climate change. It's about a shrinking ecosystem. It's about poverty. It's about the way in which animals and humans can compete for food sources. And I want people, and that's why I drew the play in the way that I did, is to think about the entire ecosystem and think about our connectivity, that a gesture that we make that may seem small in our homes may have this devastating impact on someone who's living half a world away. And that's what I want people to think about, is just the interconnectivity of our world right now, and how we can make subtle shifts in the way in which we consume and the way in which we behave that can have these ripple effects and repercussions in other places.
Thank you. I'm going to look at my little note and see. Yeah, one more thing that I would like to ask you is, so you wrote the play in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Or 17, we don't remember, but 17 or 18 we talked about earlier. So how do you think, considering now it's 5 years later, that affects the play and the relevance of the play?
Well, the play still has a great relevance, even though since I wrote the play and since we premiered, China has banned the purchase of ivory, and so that has been a very, very important step toward protecting elephants. But unfortunately, we still see that many of the places that are the natural habitats of elephants are in the midst of armed conflicts and in the midst of land conflicts. And so elephants remain very much in jeopardy.
Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time, and hope to see you in Stockholm soon and that you're able to come and see the production.
That would be
Thank you
fantastic.
very much.
Thank you.
You.